Namandavits, 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 namandavits.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our hybrid virtual and in-person service. And also, thank you for waking up an hour early to be here. Welcome to Daylight Savings Time. My name is Karen, and I would like to thank you for attending this morning's Dharma family and the special interfaith panel. Reverend CJ will now lead us in a brief guided meditation, after which we will continue with our service.
Invite all of us to take some time to slow down just a bit. We might soften our gaze or close our eyes, whatever feels more comfortable. And bring attention to our breath. Noting the breath is a really foundational way of practicing mindfulness. And as we're all sitting together, I invite you to really take your time breathing in. Once your lungs feel full, let your belly expand. And then breathe out slowly through the mouth. As humans, when we experience really big emotions like stress or anxiety, our breath can get shallow and our heartbeat might rise. But in this moment of mindfulness, we can slow down and really stretch with our breath. Expand the boundaries of this body. As we conclude this very brief moment of mindfulness together, I invite you to find time to practice this throughout the day, just paying attention to the breath. In doing so, we might notice a lot of other things too that we take for granted. Asho. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu.
Reverend CJ will now chant the Jusei, which is on page 93 of the Purple Service Book.
Jusei. Jusei is a gatha or a hymn which comes from the larger Sutra of Immeasurable Life. In that sutra, the Bodhisattva Dharmakara, who becomes Amida Buddha, declares to the Buddha of that day, Lokeshvara Raja, their intention to become a Buddha. The three sacred vows of the Jusei referred to Dharmakara's pledge to 1. Establish the most incomparable vow in the world. 2. To become a great provider and save the poor and suffering. And 3. To attain Buddhahood and have the name Namo Amida Butsu heard throughout the 10 quarters of the universe. 조세감 이시무조도 시간 후만속 세이후조쇼각 가오무료고 후이라이세슈 후사이쇼빙구 세이후조쇼각 가시조붓도 묘쇼쇼지포 교미쇼몸 세이후조쇼각 리오크진쇼넨 조회슈본교 시금무조도 이쇼텐닌시 지니키엔다이호 후쇼무사이도 쇼조산금요 고사이슈야그남 가이히지에겐 메시콘모암 헤이소크쇼아크도 쯔랍젠슈모 고소조만속 이오로지포 니지갑슈즈기 텐코온후겐 이슈카이호소 고세크도크호 조로 集中説法ししく供養一切部具足種特本元年心上満徳意三害を女仏無下知津田未不詳願学エリ投資最小尊志願や効果大戦の感動国書天人とうち妙けなまんだべなまんだべなまんだべなまんだべなまんだべなまんだべ願にしく読平等性一切道本菩提心お上ナモアミダ仏ナモアミダ仏ナモアミダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏ナマンダナマンダ仏ナマンダ仏
Please rise if you are able to follow along with the Gatha, A Special Place, which is on the handout. And please remain standing for the reading of the Three Treasures 1. I will now recite Three Treasures 1 on page 8 of the Purple Service Book. Please feel free to follow along. Three Treasures 1. Hard is it to be born into human life. Now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the teachings of the Blessed One. Now we hear it. If we do not realize the truth in this life, when will it be realized? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we absorb ourselves in the principle of the way to enlightenment and awaken in ourselves the supreme will. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we be submerged in the depths of the doctrine and gain wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we live in harmony in the great assembly as disciples of Buddha and be freed from all hindrances, becoming units of true accord in the life of harmony, in a spirit of universal oneness, freed from the bondage of selfishness. Even through myriad ages of kalpas, hard is it to hear such an excellent, profound, and wonderful doctrine. Now we are able to hear and receive it. Let us thoroughly understand the true meaning of Tathagata's teachings. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namo Amida Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda Butsu. Namanda. See, we have some new guests today, so we would like to welcome the following new guests. If you feel comfortable, stand up or wave so that we can recognize you. Janine. Andrew. Diego. And Veronique Tellier. Thank you. Welcome to our service. Okay. I'll now read the announcements that have been submitted. Community action through art making and protest safety. That's on Sunday, March 15th at 1:30 p.m. Join the Berkeley Japanese American Citizens League, JACL, and the UC Berkeley Nikkei Students Union, NSU, to take action through art, writing, and safety. We will learn ways to stay safe when attending protests, create art pieces, and be with community. The RSVP link is included in the flyer posted in the social hall and in the weekly email. Online meditation and discussion. Wednesday, March 18th at 7 p.m. The sign-up link is on our website. The Spring Ohigan Potluck and Musical Memories by the Grateful Crane Ensemble. We will have a potluck after the Ohigan service on March 22nd. Please join if you are able. Also, please check your Toban chair for your lunch offering and tasks. After the potluck at 12:30 p.m. in the Hondo, the Grateful Crane Ensemble will perform some of your favorite tunes from classic Broadway musicals. The show was written by Soji Kashiwagi, that's the son of one of our members, Sadako. Please join us if you are able. No RSVP is required. And I took down the Musical Memories poster, so please, and I'll put it back up on the bulletin board when we're done. So please feel free to attend our potluck and enjoy the musical memories afterwards. Let's see. The BBT Dharmanar on Thursday, March 26th at 6 p.m. The topic is Buddhism and Aging. The sign-up link is on our website. And as the season turns into daylight savings time, it's time to think about the Satsuki Bazaar. So the Satsuki Bazaar this year will be a one-day event on Sunday, March 17th from 11:30 to 5 p.m. This year, you can find all the latest updates on our BBT Satsuki Bazaar website. The draft work schedule is out, so please respond by April 1st. Barbecue steak dinner pre-orders, you can see the website to reserve your steak dinner before May 13th. There's a clean-out sale. When you go into the social hall today for the social, after the service, at the back of the social hall, there are items to take home through the end of March. Optional donations are gratefully accepted, so you might see some trinkets in the back that you might like to take home with you. The Bazaar fundraiser. We are continuing to update appliances, facilities, and more. So if you are able, please see the website to donate. Everything is appreciated. The online silent auction. The silent auction team is already working hard. If you have donations valued at $50 or more, please bring them to the office in the old temple before April 1st. The online site will be open on May 1st, and bids will be accepted from May 1st through Sunday, May 17th at 3 p.m. We will continue to provide updates. Feel free to check the website for the latest news. The Jodo Shinshu parking will be available next Sunday, March 15th. The gate will open at 9 a.m. and close at 9:30 sharp. Please arrive during this period to take advantage of the JSC parking for the Sunday service. And let's see, one other announcement that I wanted to make was the Rising Tides concert, which is scheduled for Saturday, March 21st at 4 p.m. As many of you may know Ko Yamakawa. He is our very enthusiastic taiko instructor, and he's a postdoc. He's graduated, I guess this is his memorial concert in honor or in celebration of his graduation from his long education. And so he is using this concert to spotlight not only his own compositions on taiko, and also, I think, also shakuhachi and fue, but he is also spotlighting some of the other taiko, compatriots, the other members of the taiko community that he interacts with, and also two affiliated groups from the Berkeley Buddhist Temple. So the Berkeley Buddhist Temple Intermediate Taiko Group will be performing, and the Northern California Gagaku Group will be also performing on that day. Again, it's at 4 p.m. The doors open at 4 p.m. at the International Chevron Auditorium, International House Chevron Auditorium. Doors open at 4 p.m. And after the concert, there'll be a short reception at the Jodo Shinshu Center next door. Let's see. So now we will have the interfaith panel discussion. Dharma school students, if you are in middle school or high school, please stay for the interfaith panel discussion. If you are a preschool through 5th grade students, please go to the front, Oshoko, and go to your classrooms.
Good morning, everyone. So it'll take us a second to get set up for the interfaith panel. Our discussion today is targeted hate. What should faith communities do and not do? After the panel discussion, everyone's invited to join us for light refreshments in the social hall. And what we'll be doing is each panelist will have about 10 minutes to share a response to this question. And then we'll have discussion amongst the panelists, and then at the end we'll have some time for Q&A from everyone here in the Hondo. I have the bios you submitted. I can read them, or you can introduce yourself. What would you prefer? They're a little long, so I wanted to give you the option. Okay, yeah, okay. So they'll introduce themselves. I'm very excited to have them here today and to share their wisdom and experience. Okay. So now the hardest part. Who's going to go first?
I will.
Okay.
Good morning, and so nice to be with you all.
Are the mics on? Let's check and see. I don't think it is.
Okay. Great. Good morning. My name is Liesl Dees, and I'm the ministerial intern at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Berkeley, which is in Kensington. The church was founded in 1891 and was a neighbor over on Dana, but in the late 1950s, the University of California claimed the church building in eminent domain. And so we relocated out to Kensington. And so that's why there is a Berkeley Fellowship in Berkeley today, and the UU Church of Berkeley is geographically inappropriately still named, but in Kensington. So we have a long identity in the community, and a long tradition of pushing back on targeted hate. And let me say that I am have recently relocated to the Bay Area. I've called Farmington, New Mexico home for 28 years, and I'm a student at Star King School for the Ministry, which used to be on Holy Hill in the university, and is now located in Oakland. And I will graduate from Star King with a Master's of Divinity degree in this May. But let me jump into the topic of targeted hate. Well, do you want us to do that, or do you want us to?
You do the intros first.
Okay, great. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Greetings of peace. My name is Dr. Zachary Markwith. I'm the Deputy Director at Intercultural Networks Group, or ING. We deliver presentations and seminars about Muslims and their faith. We also have interreligious panels with Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, and Hindu speakers, and then another series of panels with to counter bigotry with African American speakers, Indigenous, Latino, Asian, Jewish, and Muslim. I'm a Muslim American. I'm also an academic. I have a doctorate in Islamic studies and a master's in comparative religious studies. I was born and raised in California, and just very grateful to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Good morning, buenos dias. My name is Dr. Tanya Triana. I'm so happy to be here with you all today. And I am representing East Bay Meditation Center in downtown Oakland, California. That's my home Sangha. I am a graduate of East Bay Meditation Center's inaugural spiritual teacher and leadership program. Graduated in 2023. And I am a proud first-generation U.S.-born daughter of Latin American immigrants. And my daytime job is a high school Spanish teacher at an independent school in Oakland, California. Very happy to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Thank you for introducing yourselves. Now, I think maybe if we want to just go in the same order for the response to the question, how to respond to targeted hate.
Great. So I was initially asked to be on this panel from a Christian perspective, which is not mine. Unitarian Universalists come from two Christian theological traditions, Unitarian and Universalist, and we are a pluralistic faith. We have a lot of people with hyphenated identities within our faith tradition. And so you'll find Christian Unitarian Universalist, Jewish Unitarian Universalist, Buddhist Unitarian Universalists. And what draws us together is not a sense of believing alike, but a sense of shared values. And it's from those shared values that our commitment pushing back on targeted hate comes. And there are three theological traditions and three values that make a commitment to speaking out against hate. The first is a commitment to inherent worth and dignity of all people. In our faith tradition, we don't believe that people have inherent sin, that people are born with something wrong, but instead that every human, every person has inherent worth and dignity. The second value is one of interdependence, of seeing that we are all connected together in ways that we will never understand. And the third piece is connecting us through love and a commitment to care and compassion in our world. When we dig down a little in those values, the value of interdependence is one that is a given, but how we live into that, what we do with that, really matters. One of our theologians, Reverend Sophia Bentoncourt, says that she wishes our value of interdependence had a qualifier around it. Relational interdependence or accountable interdependence, because we are interdependent whether we recognize that or not. What matters is what we do with how we impact each other. Pollution travels downstream. There is a connection to us all, whether or not we do something positive with that. When I think about the topic of targeted hate, a particular Unitarian Universalist lecture comes to my mind. It was given in 2023 by the Reverend Cecilia Kingman, and it was entitled, The Little Pony, My Little Pony Was Right. Now, if you've ever encountered My Little Pony, they're these little white ponies and other colors as well. They have colorful manes. They have decorations on them. And this was a 2023 Berry Street lecture in the Unitarian Universalist tradition, and she was talking about authoritarianism and fascism. And she used a lot of statistics that I think we've heard more these days, and I think our conversation around authoritarianism and fascism has become more common in the past year and a half. She used My Little Pony to talk about this, though, because of a certain story arc that had the ponies entrapped in a authoritarian government. And the ponies had little cutie marks on them. And one of the things about the authoritarian government was they wanted to obliterate, to cover up the cutie marks. They wanted everyone to be the same. They wanted to keep everyone looking alike and not celebrating differences. And that lecture was the first time I really, really got why transgender individuals have been targeted in recent years and how that targeted hate is intended to keep people thinking alike, to keep people's differences from being celebrated. I see standing up to hate as really part of a countering an authoritarian playbook that is in action these days. And so when we think about what faith communities can do, I think about really pushing back against that hate and standing up en masse. There's a training that I've seen in a couple of different circles these days from an organization called Freedom Trainers, in which they give kind of a general overview of authoritarianism. And they use the statistic that perhaps you've heard that when 3.5% of a population is standing up on regular, sustained protest against a government, being out in the streets, that the likelihood of authoritarianism staying goes from 7% let me rephrase that, of authoritarianism being overthrown, goes from 7% likelihood that they won't be overthrown to 50% that they will be overthrown. So seeing a need to push back against the othering and the hate that is the hallmark of our current administration, I see as particularly important. And in the what we should not do, I think the hard piece about that is not succumbing to hate ourselves. It's to push back on that without putting anyone out of our hearts, by staying in that care and compassion and staying centered on love that is a key part of our faith. And with that, I'll stop and turn it over to Zach.
Thank you so much. I think we're in accord on so much. There was a lot there. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. I'll just agree that we have to respond to hate with love, it seems to me, and also note that we often sort of, it's very easy to, and I do this all the time, externalize what we hate. But I think, as we know from the teachings in our various religions, that these seeds, these principles are within us, hate and love and so on. And so we have to try to water those that are based on love, but also care for and sort of nurture, be aware of those that are based on hate. Yesterday I was reading a book. I told the other panelists, brothers in the beloved community, about the relationship between Thich Nhat Hanh and Martin Luther King. And Thich Nhat Hanh was discussing how engaged Buddhism came about during the war in Vietnam when bombs were falling. And, they wanted to continue the practices of mindful breathing and mindful walking so that they could be aware of the situation, not burn out, and be compassionate for those who were suffering. I think we're in a similar moment right now, actually. Those who are paying attention, what's been happening in Gaza and Israel for the past 2 years, what's now happening in Iran, in the Gulf, in Lebanon, the war the United States is waging overseas, and the impact that it has on people here, which is key. It's sort of crucial to the work that I do at ING, thinking about how communities here are also targeted by hate crimes, discrimination, bullying. Right now, that's especially impacting Iranian Americans, Arab Americans, Jewish Americans. And I think it's important to try to differentiate these governments from the people, for example. So the, Iranians are not the Iranian government. Lebanese people are not Hezbollah. Jewish people are not the Israeli government. And, Americans, we sort of know, hey, we're not the Trump administration, the Trump regime. So we have to look at people as human beings and try to see the light within them. And I think also to sustain our spiritual practices so that we have the clarity and the courage and the compassion to respond to people. There are a lot of other ways that people are being targeted right now, including through ICE. So I think we have to stand in solidarity with our, really everyone, because we know that there are many immigrant communities, those from different parts of Asia, from the Middle East, from Africa, but especially our Hispanic and Latina, Latinx siblings who here in California are being targeted a lot more than other people. And I was pleased to see in Minnesota, a lot of faith leaders came out in protest. Also here in California, there have been protests and vigils, and places of worship have even offered refuge to those in need. I also want to say a word. It's as the only sort of man on the panel. It's International Women's Day, so happy International Women's Day to all of the women and girls. I don't think we can appear at an event like this without mentioning the sort of horrific crimes that have come from those in power, connected to the Epstein files. These crimes against women and girls, also the bombing of a school in Iran, and just daily violence, misogyny against women. I think we have to speak up, speak the truth about this as much as we can. I'd also like to say a few words about how we respond to hate within sort of the Muslim context, which I believe is connected to this greater heritage, as you so beautifully articulated, this oneness of humanity. Because Muslims actually believe that every community on earth, every nation on earth was given a prophet. And so we honor those who are mentioned in the Quran, which include Moses, Abraham, Jesus, Mary. We also believe Muhammad was a prophet. But this idea that every nation was given a prophet has led some Muslims to believe that those figures from the East, so for example, the Buddha, perhaps Lao Tzu, perhaps Krishna, those from the West, Hermes, Plato, indigenous teachers around the world, were sacred messengers tasked with reminding humanity about our oneness and the oneness of the divine origin, and to ask us to treat one another as we would want to be treated, essentially to follow the golden rule through trying to be compassionate. So in any case, the Prophet Muhammad taught, do not harm and do not respond with harm. He also proclaimed in his farewell sermon, an Arab is not superior to a non-Arab, nor a non-Arab superior to an Arab. A white person is not superior to a black person, nor a black person superior to a white person, except through God consciousness. The Prophet also said, shall I tell you something that will make you love one another? Spread peace among yourselves. These teachings emphasize human dignity and rights grounded in divine peace and justice. And I'll note, at the very beginning, I began with the common formula that begins every chapter of the Quran, with the exception of one, which is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the primary way that the divine is understood among Muslims. The phrase can be translated as, in the name of the divine, the compassionate, the merciful. So the primary way that we understand God is not as a sort of anthropomorphic figure, but rather the presence of compassion and mercy, which is everywhere and which is in every heart. And our task is to be oriented towards compassion, to let that well up in our hearts and to extend that to other human beings, to animals, to the earth, through our presence, but also through very practical acts, through charity, through planting trees, through, supporting hospitals, and through teaching and so on. So I just want to say, thank you again for the opportunity to be here. There are lots of ways to respond to hate, but I think we do have to recognize that we have these qualities, and the more that we cultivate love and compassion and kindness, the more of an impact we'll have on the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, folks. This is Tanya again. I'm going to leave this here so that I can fiddle with my fingers and use that to focus. I'm new to this community. Thank you for inviting me. So I'll tell a little bit of my personal story and how it's connected to how faith communities can be a resource in fighting against targeted hate. So a little bit about me. As I said, I'm the daughter of Latin American immigrants. My father is from Colombia, and my mother is from Guatemala. Both my parents left in the late 60s. So my mother was not present in Guatemala, although the rest of my extended family on my mother's side was during the Guatemalan genocide of the early 1980s. This was a quote-unquote anti-communist campaign, military dictatorship that took over in Guatemala and targeted leftist guerrillas in the country that were organizing and fighting to end the oligarchy in Guatemala and to end the racism against indigenous people that are the majority of the people in Guatemala to this day. So what this meant on the ground was a lot of what you saw in Gaza. The firebombing of villages, the kidnapping and killing of different leaders in those communities, and the targeting of women and girls with sexual violence. This was mostly directed to towards the Maya Ixil community in Guatemala. And eventually, some of the people were brought to justice, quote unquote. And I raised this because I grew up in the 1980s in Rochester, New York, which was actually one of the first sanctuary cities in the United States. We have been a city that was a refugee relocation point. So a lot of refugees from all over the world settled in Rochester, New York. We had refugees from Guatemala and El Salvador fleeing the civil wars in those countries. And I was, growing up, a member of a Catholic church. The Catholic Church that I was a member of was a part of the sanctuary movement, which you may or may not have heard about. The sanctuary movement was a movement that was basically a coalition of Catholic churches throughout North America, from Central America through to Canada, that clandestinely helped transport people through the United States to Canada. The United States was sending arms, money, and military support to the governments of Guatemala and El Salvador in order to stamp out communism, quote unquote. So the United States was not going to be offering refugee status, political asylum, to any refugees from Guatemala and El Salvador in the 1980s. So people couldn't get that status here, but they could in Canada. So essentially what was established was a new underground railroad helping Guatemalan and Salvadoran refugees get to Canada, where they could apply for political asylum and usually receive it. Our church, our little church in Rochester, New York, which was a stop on the Underground Railroad in the 1800s, of course, right there on Lake Ontario, close to Canada, close to the Canadian border. Our little church became part of the sanctuary movement, helping get people across the border to Canada. I grew up hearing the stories of refugees with their faces covered. I grew up bearing witness to their stories of why they were fleeing, and the peace that they hope to finally be able to achieve in their lives by going to Canada. It was also a very joyful childhood. The church community was a beautiful community to be a part of. The potlucks, the music, the singing, the going out to protests. I'm very proud to have been a part of that community and to have offered sanctuary to so many people whose names I don't know and I hope are safe and sound today. I think our communities, our spiritual communities, need to become sanctuaries in all kinds of ways, whether it's physical sanctuaries, actually providing safe housing for people who are unhoused or between housing, whether they're fleeing violence or the violence of poverty. I think our communities have been sanctuary. I've seen East Bay Meditation Center, the community that I'm, my home Sangha, the community that I'm a part of, be a sanctuary for activists for free Palestine. Many of us, if we speak out for a free Palestine at work, will get fired. Right? That is just the reality of many of our workplaces, including mine, the school where I work. But at East Bay Meditation Center, I could speak out for a free Palestine. Right? We could provide that space, that sanctuary, that ability for people to speak out, to speak up, to practice what they're going to say even before they go out into the community and speak in public. And that has been priceless. It has been something that I have really that has provided comfort in my own life, knowing that I have a space where I can speak out, where I won't be targeted, where I won't be othered or shunned from the community, or where, obviously, my livelihood won't be put at risk. I think as well, our communities not only need to become sanctuaries, but we also need to be looking towards the idea of the beloved community. This is a notion that comes from Christian theology that was popularized by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. And the beloved community is, I think, the Dalai Lama has said that the next Buddha is a Sangha. And I think our Sanghas can be beloved communities. We can be communities that practice fierce compassion, that practice an encompassing love with a capital L, right? A love that is a verb and not just an emotion. You know? A love that put into action protects those who are most vulnerable and stands up for our values of protecting life, of honoring relationships, of stewarding the earth, of speaking the truth. But in order for our communities to become beloved communities, we also need to address what another thing that the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. spoke to, which is the creation of a positive peace. Right? He spoke about a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, right? When it's like copacetic, right? When nobody's upset, nobody's raising their voice, but maybe inside they're upset, right? But they're not saying it in order to not speak the tension, right? Or to break the illusion of peace. But a positive peace, according to the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., was not the absence of tension, but the presence of justice. How do we create communities in which we all feel safe to be heard, to speak up, even when we're upset, even when we think differently? How can we create communities that lovingly confront difference, right? That lovingly confront our differences of opinion, and that can sit and work through the tensions and the differences. I believe that is our task as well, right? So we have this greater task of challenging the los demonios que están en poder, the people who are in power that seem to be acting like demons these days. And then we have the internal work within our communities, right? To create spaces where we can speak truth to power even within our own communities, right? In which we can practice love and fierce compassion in these challenging circumstances. Big projects and little projects. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your sharing. I wanted to provide you with a chance to respond to one another. If you had any comments to share about what the other person said, maybe build on something in a conversational style, maybe for like 10 minutes or as long as you feel, if we get some momentum going. Yeah.
Well, I'll follow up on those thoughts on beloved community because that was so beautiful and so lovingly articulated. I remember when I first encountered that phrase, I would think of it in a much more abstract sense of people that I cared about. We are building beloved community by being together. And I realized over time that Dr. King articulated this in a much more concrete way, that it was about pushing back on racism, that it was about addressing economic inequality. It was living without war and violence on many different levels. And so really lifting up that concept of beloved community, not as just a warm, fuzzy feeling that we all love to be together, but that we are actively pushing back on systems of oppression.
Yeah, I appreciate that you raising that as well, Tanya, and these other reflections. I think it's such a crucial concept, beloved community, and I'm grateful that you raised Gaza, and because I think so often, sometimes Muslims feel on the outside of that community, and it's not difficult to sort of let everyone in and to imagine a Sangha that sort of embraces all of humanity. And I agree that it's also pushing back against racism, against economic exploitation, against war. I think we do have to sort of name fascism as well. You know, one of the issues that we have right now is that sort of the billionaire class, they're able to push forward with wars, with, you know, racist policies directed towards immigrants and black and brown communities, because they're able to divide us on the basis of religion and on the basis of ethnicity. So they're promoting basically white Christian nationalism. And this happens in different forms in different places. So it's not limited. And of course we know that there are healing versions of Christianity, Dr. King being one example. But there are those who would like to divide us on the basis of these identities. And I think the identities are important, and we can come to a place where we celebrate diversity within a greater unity. And we sort of understand that our religion is one part of the mosaic, our ethnicity is one part of it, but it's all here to teach us something and to celebrate people with different perspectives, people with different backgrounds, and especially those who are being targeted. So we have to sort of raise up those identities and those voices.
Thank you. I'm smiling because I remembered as you were saying that my nephew asking me, my nephew who goes to Catholic school, and when he asked me this, he's probably 7. We were talking about, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but he asked me really sincerely, Tia Tania, but which God is the real God? And I said, well, they're all the real God, baby. It's just what different cultures see as God, right? And God is love. So it's just how different cultures see the divine, which is love. And of course, that was not a satisfactory answer. Because he wants to know the real one, right? He's very exact. But you know, the sentiment remains the same, right? It's just different words, different languages, different cultures. But the ethical values remain the same, right? To protect and honor life, to honor our relationships and our bodies, the great gift that are our bodies, to honor the earth, to honor truth. These are central tenets across all global religions and in many communities, all right, regardless of faith. I think these are the commonalities that we will base our greater beloved community on, right? Yeah, and I mean, there's also the very real concrete ways in which we need to be standing up to these systems of power. So how do we not contribute to the surveillance culture, right? In this institution, as well as in our own homes and in our own communities, right? Because all these tools will be used against us, right? How do we create safety nets within our communities? If somebody, God forbid, is taken, right, or we can't find them, right, or they just need help, they're sick, right? How do we make sure no one is left out? These are really basic things, right? But they are going to be so necessary for what is coming, right? And I'm looking, you know, my whole life in my political education, I have studied what happens in authoritarian regimes, how the people continue living, how they continue holding on to what they hold dear, and how they continue to support one another. Looking at places like Chile, looking at places like Cuba, right? Looking at places like Guatemala. And I think the U.S. arrogance needs to be thrown away, and we need to see what we can learn from other societies that have been through this experience, what we're experiencing right now. All right, what happens when your government is taken over, right, by power-hungry people who care nothing about life or honoring the people, who put profit over people, right? This has happened the world over. How can we learn from those other instances, right, and adapt those to our home? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Before I open it up to the audience for questions, I have a question, and maybe this could be the topic for our next interfaith panel, because I feel like it's a really complex question. But it seems like a lot of what you all have been speaking to requires a lot of courage, a lot of bravery. And on the other side of that is fear. And in this moment, I think we all have a very strong sense of fear. Like, what happens if our temple makes a stance, a so-called political stance, a politicized stance on human rights? That's a real fear that I know a lot of people here feel. And I know a lot of people in our national institution, the BCA, feel. And other ministers like me feel. I've been told, don't talk about politics, because that could make someone upset. That comes from a place of fear, because we don't know how to navigate conflict. But how do we deal with our fear? How do we work with our fear in spite, and push forward and do a lot of these really important things that you were speaking to?
I think of fear, I think of courage as not the absence of fear, but feeling the fear and moving forward with it. And I think of the practices of being with our emotions that are so central to Buddhism, of letting things come in, letting things go, practicing non-attachment on things, and acknowledging that that is real and being with that. I think I think there's a muscle that marginalized communities in the United States have practiced long for centuries of being with discomfort. And I think many people in America have not learned to be with discomfort. And so we often mistake being uncomfortable for being targeted, and they're not the same thing. And so I think using our spiritual tools to help us be in our bodies, recognizing what is happening within us, and using that as a grounded place to have the hard conversations.
Thank you. One of my teachers taught me, Mushim Ikeda at East Bay Meditation Center, Mushim Patricia Ikeda. She taught me the mantra, fear is present, but there is no danger. Because oftentimes fear is anxiety, it's an emotion, and it's not responding to reality. Right? There's not actually a mortal threat, threat to our livelihood, a threat to our physical person, even a threat to our psyche. Right? So I think that's, I often say that to myself to push through. Right? I chant to Green Tara, right? To push through the fear and to act. Also, I think, that fear, rather than reading it as fear, maybe we can read it as the Spirit urging us to act, right? That when the heart races and when the palms get sweaty, and when the hair stands up on the back of our necks, as it is for me, all of these things are happening for me right now, that's actually Spirit within you urging you to speak, because what you are saying needs to be heard. And so those are just a few of the things a few of the techniques and tactics that I use. And then, of course, never being alone, never imagining that you're the only person doing it, right? I have all of my ancestors behind me, all of my ancestors of lineage as well, right? And all of the freedom fighters that have ever existed. They're all with me, right? I'm never walking into these situations alone and unprotected.
Yeah, so I recognize fear can be very real for a lot of folks, and some people are more vulnerable than others, especially, if their, immigration status is sort of pending. So there has to be some sympathy for folks who do feel that maybe they can't speak up, but then those of us who can should try to be more vocal. But at the same time, I think, courage is sort of a mean between being rushing in a sort of foolhardy way or being completely coward about things. So we can try to find that balance, and part of it comes also, I think, trying to be focused on, what's our purpose in this life? What are we focused on? Are we here to please people? Are we here to make a name for ourselves? Or are we here to be devoted to, the divine, to peace, to justice, to compassion? And if that's our focus, if love is our focus, then I think that helps us get through fear that we have. And it is natural. People have fear. There's times when I've been afraid.
I'll add one other thought, and that is you've probably seen a lot of the music that came out of Minnesota, of short videos on social media that have people singing in collective entities. And there's a group called Singing Resistance who is behind this, and they've been leading some actions in the East Bay, and I participated in one of those at Target and Home Depot last weekend. There's a song that is popular in those circles that goes, "Courage, my friend, you do not walk alone. We will walk with you and sing our spirits home." So finding things like that bring us courage and bring us into our hearts.
Thank you so much. Okay, now, if anyone would like to ask a question or share a comment, please raise your hand and I can bring the microphone. Reverend Doc.
Okay. Thank you for your inspiring and insightful comments. You all talked about the God or the ultimate truth as being love and compassion. And so my question is, how do you reconcile the fact that God exists, but there is so much hate, so much difficulties, and things have not changed from 2,000 years ago to 2,500 years ago? It continues to be this way. So I understand how you reconcile by how you all are, very heroically doing things. But my question has to do with probably, theologically, the theodicy issue. How do you see the existence of evil and difficulties? The loss of 150 school kids in Iran, by the recent bombing. I mean, why? How do you deal with that? I know you act, but how do you reconcile the fact that God exists, and I'm repeating myself, but all this, the hate and authoritarianism continue to get even worse?
So this is a big question, and I try not to answer it to someone who's suffering, who's gone through, like, if someone just lost a child in the school that you mentioned, I would just want to sit with them without trying to provide a theological answer. There are answers, I think. I would say first of all, good and evil, it seems to me, or the tendency towards them are part of human nature, regardless of whether someone's religious or not. So you can look at secular ideologies, you can look at non-theistic religions, and people within those communities have also been responsible for great atrocities. It doesn't sort of go away when someone's no longer religious. But from my point of view, the question should sort of be turned back on us, and the problem is related to a kind of dualism where we think that sort of God is outside of us, and we're expecting someone outside of us to do good, when we could be asking, like, why is it that we're not, as a collective and as individuals, why are we, harming others? Because it does come from every community. It comes from, like I said, from those who would consider themselves secular. A lot of the motivation for these wars actually aren't religious. They're based on, like, selling weapons, the military-industrial complex, as Eisenhower put it. It's based on securing oil. It's based on wanting land and geopolitical control over the region. It's also because certain people, Netanyahu and Trump, have committed crimes, and they're trying to distract people from those crimes. At the heart of our religions, I think, is something very beautiful, whether it's Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, and so on. But yeah, I think we have to sort of reflect on the idea that the divine and as I would understand it, God is within each of us, and so we sort of have the power to act with compassion, and then sometimes that does mean standing up against those who are harming the rest of humanity.
I didn't want to go first on that because I don't consider myself a theist. And in my tradition are people who do consider themselves theists and many who don't. The Universalists their notable theology was believing there was no hell, that there was a loving God who would not condemn anyone to eternal damnation. And the Unitarians focused on the unity of God rather than a doctrine of the Trinity. In bringing up my children in that religious tradition, there was one Sunday in which they were invited to draw what their conceptions of God were. My son's was a dark picture, and he said God was pretend. And that was perfectly acceptable in that religious tradition. My daughter's was warm colors, and hers was that God is love. I'm challenged to use that theistic language because I think it is so loaded in our world, and I think reconciling the history with reconciling atrocities with a sense of love is hard. But I know it on an intimate level. I know it on a level of when people engage with each other with open hearts and how we care for each other. That for me is the care and compassion that is at the heart of how I want to live in the world and the world that I want to see together.
I think there will always be people who have lost their way. I think there will always be people who are committing harm. And I think sometimes I might be one of them. So I have to leave open that possibility, and also for people to be changed by love. Be shy.
Hello. Thank you all for your messages. I found it very lovely hearing all of your different views on the topic. My question is, I think especially post 9/11, the US government has kind of been dominant on this war on terror, and all these different authoritarian and wars that have been started have kind of turned into wicked problems that'll take multi-generational efforts to try to resolve. So I guess what I'm asking is how do you reconcile the fact that resolving these issues will take years or decades of effort, and that in any country suffering exists, whether it be poverty, whether it be starvation, you know. So how do you reconcile this being a very difficult topic to actually resolve entirely, if that's even possible? So yeah.
Well, I'll start by saying that I think poverty is violence, because it's structural. It's structural violence, right? We have enough resources to feed everyone on Earth, to house everyone, to take care of people. It is how they're distributed unequally that is a question of justice, right? And I know that I see myself in a long line of people who have been who have devoted their lives to sowing the seeds of justice, even if I may never see them grow and flower. But it feels good with my heart. I can be okay with my soul, knowing that I put my little grain of sand in. Seeing myself as a part of a collective, and not just as one individual, like, yelling at the powers that be, and not being heard, right? Is what gives me, it energizes me, and it feeds my faith to continue on. And that comes not as much from the faith communities I've been a part of, but from the social justice and activist communities that I've been a part of, understanding that the big wins we might not actually see them in our lifetimes, but the small wins that we achieve along the way, that we need to celebrate, that we need to take the time to celebrate with much joy and fanfare. Those are what keep me going, and understanding that I'm a part of a greater group that is moving in that same direction.
A lot of the work that I do is around education at Intercultural Networks Group, or ING, so that we educate about Muslims and other communities, which really counter the stereotypes that were taught in this sort of post 9/11 world, which are used to dehumanize each of us, to make us fearful, And when we get to know each other, you know, through, you know, events like this, but also, you know, picking up a book and forming relationships with various communities, we realize that those that are being stereotyped are, you know, they're very much like us, and even where they're not like us, that's what makes it interesting, right? That, you know, that's part of like the beauty of being human, is that we're not the same. So you know, I would advise trying to get to know people who the media, government, education system, social media are trying to tell us are, you know, the enemy. Try to get to know Iranians right now, reach out to them, Arabs, the Jewish community, and you'll see that they're very hospitable, they're very generous, they're very kind, and get to know more about the history, their contributions to this country. Right now, I mean, one of the most popular poets in the English language is a Persian poet, Jalaluddin Rumi. He's been one of the most popular poets for a long time. He's a Sufi poet. He writes all about the idea of divine love, that love is ultimately, it's ubiquitous, it's everywhere, but he found it in very particular places, in his beloved friend Shams, in music, in food, in strangers. And people are like, they love this. So Iranian and Persian culture has offered us so much, and we can sort of recognize that they're not the one leader that we're using as a justification to harm them. And that's true of everyone. Again, Jews are not Netanyahu. We are not Trump. We can't believe the lies.
I appreciate the question and the reality of what we've lived with since 9/11 in 25 years of people stoking flames of hate. I think in this moment is really an opportunity to think about the world that we are creating. We're in a moment of pushing back against authoritarianism. Sometimes that's symbolic. The Freedom Trainers training that I referenced earlier, they break down resistance in terms of symbolic resistance. That might be protests, things that really are just getting out in the streets and showing that this is not the only way people think. Of targeted actions, that may be things like boycotts. But the third element is really creating an alternative world, a world that relies on each other more than governmental programs, that relies on caring for each other in a sense of mutual aid. And I think that's what we've witnessed in Minnesota. And I think building those networks to help create the world that we want to be a part of is a key aspect of resisting hate.
I could just add one thing, one last thing, sorry. I think it's important in any age to, if we look back throughout history, even in the most horrible moments, there were always people who stood on the right side of justice, on the right side of history, I guess you would say. And I look to those people, like when I'm teaching my students, you know, it's like those are the examples that I point to, right? Because I don't believe in the, you know, oh, he was a man of his age idea, right? I think that there are, in every age, when there has been injustice, there have been people resisting that injustice, right? And may it be documented, may it be written down that we are those people too, right? So I remember asking a professor of mine a long time ago, you know, why do we go out and protest if the Iraq war is going to happen anyway, right? And she said, so that they will know for the future, throughout history, that we said no, that not everybody agreed with this. May it be written, may it be so.
Okay, thank you very much. I think looking at the time, we'll conclude the panel with that. We'll have social time, so hopefully you can chat in the social hall. I have a few thank yous to conclude our service. Thank you all for being here. Maybe let's give a round of applause for panelists. Thank you to Karen for being our chairperson today. Thank you to our live streaming team who helped live stream our service. Thank you to the Dharma School teachers for guiding our Dharma School students. Thank you to Ms. Tanaka for playing the piano for the gatha so beautifully. And thank you to our March Toban for helping with refreshments in the social hall. This will conclude our service for today and our interfaith panel. Thank you for everyone who joined us here in person and everyone who joined online.